Have you ever wondered why a single unspoken image in your mind can change the way a man looks at you forever? Why something he can't quite name, something you never reveal in words, can haunt him far longer than anything you openly give? In Jung's world, this is not coincidence. It is the inner muse stirring, the archetypal feminine whispering to the shadowed corridors of his unconscious, sending signals he cannot trace back to their source. And in that invisible current lies the most dangerous form of seduction, the one that begins not with the body, but with the image you birth in the unseen realm. The woman who understands this is not playing with surface charm. She is working at the depth where symbols, dreams, and projections live, where a man's shadow is both his prison and his longing. Jung called it active imagination, the deliberate summoning of images from the unconscious, letting them speak, morph, and guide. To the uninitiated, it sounds like fantasy, but in the language of the psyche, this is the doorway to the most potent attraction of all, the kind that shapes his inner narrative of you. A man does not fall for what is merely visible. He falls for the meaning he assigns to what he cannot fully reach. And when your inner muse begins to inhabit that space in him, she doesn't shout. She plants symbols like seeds in the dark. A look that feels like a half-remembered dream. A pause in conversation that lingers just too long. A story you tell with gaps, letting him fill them in with his own unconscious needs. You do not chase his attention. You shape the stage where his shadow is invited to dance. This is why some women, without fitting conventional beauty, are unforgettable. They are not merely seen. They are experienced as a mystery. The Stoics knew the power of this restraint. Seneca wrote of the mind's endless ability to torment itself with imagined scenarios. What you withhold becomes his private obsession, because his own psyche will not leave a riddle unsolved. The ego hates emptiness. It rushes to fill it with stories. And here is where your mastery lies, in offering the spaces, not the answers. The shadow, in Jungian terms, is everything we deny in ourselves: repressed desires, unclaimed power, forbidden hunger. When a man meets a woman who mirrors a part of his own shadow, it is both terrifying and irresistible. He is drawn to her without knowing why, because she awakens the fragments he has buried. But only the woman who has met her own shadow can wield this power without being consumed by it. If you have not confronted your own darkness, the game turns on you. You become reactive, desperate, tangled in the same projections you sought to inspire. In active imagination, the woman closes her eyes and lets the inner figure appear. She does not control it. She engages it, listens to it, even argues with it. In these dialogues, she begins to understand the archetypes moving through her: the lover, the queen, the huntress, the sage, and with each image, she learns that the energy she exudes outward begins inside, in the mythic theater of her own soul. By the time a man senses her presence, he is feeling something she has rehearsed, not with calculation, but with inner clarity. This is not manipulation, it is art. Manipulation is rooted in fear and scarcity, in clawing for control. But the muse who seduces the shadow is anchored in self-possession. She knows that her value is not granted by him. It radiates from her alignment with the deeper currents of her psyche. He feels it as an aura, a weight in the air when she enters, a strange pull when she is gone. And the more he tries to rationalize it, the further from logic he drifts. Some men will flee from this energy. They will sense in you the possibility of their own undoing and turn away. That is not your concern. The ones who remain will do so because they are ready, or at least willing, to step into the labyrinth. And in that space, the dance between muse and shadow begins, not with declarations, but with subtle exchanges that bypass reason. You may think he is choosing you consciously, but in truth, his unconscious is already 3 steps ahead. It is your stillness, your careful withholding, your unhurried gaze that allows his shadow to rise without shame. You are not rushing to close the gap. You are allowing it to stretch, to hum with tension. In the silence between you, entire stories are written in his mind, stories that will keep him awake at night, wondering what it is about you that he cannot forget. This is the forbidden portal Jung spoke of, not in the language of romance novels, but in the language of individuation. It is the moment when 2 psyches meet in the underworld of symbols and the ordinary rules no longer apply. In that space, you are not merely a woman, you are an archetype, and an archetype cannot be discarded, for it lives in him now, stitched into the dream fabric of his shadow. When a woman has entered that hidden corridor of a man's mind, she no longer needs to grasp for his attention. It follows her like a phantom he cannot exorcise. Jung understood that the unconscious resists direct force. The more one pushes against it, the more it slips away. This is why the muse never storms the gates. She arrives like a half-remembered song, laced with the scent of something familiar yet unnamed. He cannot touch it, so he carries it, hoping proximity will reveal its source. In the language of depth psychology, attraction is not merely chemistry. It is a psychic event, a merging of projections. The man projects his own denied qualities onto her, and she, if wise, does not rush to correct him. She lets his projection breathe, not because she is dishonest, but because she understands the work his psyche is trying to do. The Stoics would have called this restraint a form of self-command. Epictetus taught that power lies not in controlling others, but in mastering the impulses to speak, to demand, to over-explain. By holding her ground in silence, she allows the man to wrestle with himself, and in doing so, he binds his fascination tighter around her image. The danger, of course, is when the woman mistakes this psychic pull for her own need. If she begins to crave his response as proof of her worth, she shifts from muse to supplicant, and once she chases, the spell fractures. Jung would say the anima, his inner feminine, has been forced into daylight before its time, and what was once a living mystery now becomes an ordinary figure he can place, label, and abandon. The muse who seduces the shadow does not fear absence. She understands absence as a sculptor understands negative space. It shapes the form, gives dimension to the whole. She can disappear for days, weeks without apology, knowing the silence she leaves behind will echo louder than any constant presence could. This is not cruelty. It is the maintenance of polarity, the magnetic tension that fuels desire. A man who feels no space between himself and a woman eventually loses the urge to reach for her. But the one who feels that she is just beyond his grasp will keep reaching, sometimes for years. In active imagination, this dance of presence and absence mirrors the movement between conscious and unconscious. One cannot live entirely in the depths without losing touch with reality, just as one cannot live only in daylight without the soul withering from lack of mystery. The woman who has practiced this inner art knows how to step between the two realms. When she is with him, she offers flashes of intimacy, an unguarded laugh, a glance that lands a beat too long, then retreats before the moment is consumed. This rhythm keeps the shadow alive, prevents the image from becoming fixed and lifeless. Many women misunderstand the nature of this power. They believe it rests in performance, in altering appearance, voice, or mannerisms to lure him closer. But the truth is far simpler and far more difficult. The most potent presence is born from the woman's unshakable comfort with her own depths. A man senses when a woman has met her inner figures, faced her fears, conversed with her own darkness without flinching. It gives her a gravity, a subtle defiance that cannot be faked. In her presence, he feels both seen and undone. The Stoics warned against being enslaved by passion, and this applies here with piercing relevance. If she falls into obsession, her clarity dissolves. She becomes reactive, her mystery replaced by volatility. But if she remains rooted, she can observe his reactions without being pulled into them. She knows that his longing is his journey, not her responsibility to soothe. This is the paradox that keeps the shadow enthralled. She is the source of his unrest, yet she does not move to calm him. She lets him feel the hunger, lets him carry it into his days, into his dreams. And while he believes he is chasing her, in truth, he is circling closer to his own hidden self, guided by the image she has awakened within him. Over time, if he is brave, he may confront that shadow directly. He may see in her a reflection of what he has buried, and in that revelation, the projection begins to dissolve. This is the natural course of individuation. The Muse does not fear this ending, for she knows her role was never to be possessed. It was to open the portal, then vanish into her own depths once more. The man who lingers in the wake of such a woman often feels as though she has unsettled the very architecture of his inner world. She has, in a sense, rearranged the furniture of his psyche, quietly, without announcement, so that nothing feels quite the same as before. Jung might say she has awakened an archetype he had long neglected, a dormant figure stirring in the shadows, now casting its influence over every thought he has of her. Yet this seduction does not rely on overt gestures. It moves in the undercurrent, in the subtleties that bypass.